ॐ हृदयकमलमध्ये राजितं निर्विकल्पं सदसदखिलभेदातीतमेकस्वरूपम् हृदयकमलमध्ये राजितं निर्विकल्पं सदसदखिलभेदातीतमेकस्वरूपम् प्रकृतिविकृतिशून्यं नित्यमानन्दमूर्तिं विमलपरमहंसं रामकृष्णं भजामः। निरुपममतिसूक्ष्मं निष्प्रपञ्चं निरीहम् गगनसदृशमेशं सर्वभूतादिवासं निरुपममतिसूक्ष्मं निष्प्रपञ्चं निरीहं गगनसदृशमेशं सर्वभूतादिवासम् त्रिगुणरहितसच्चिद्ब्रह्मरूपं वरेण्यं विमलपरमहंसं रामकृष्णं भजामः। वितरितुमवतीर्णं ज्ञानभक्तिप्रशान्तिः प्रणयगलितचेत्तं जीवदुःखासहिष्णुं वितरितुमवतीर्णं ज्ञानभक्तिप्रशान्तिः प्रणयगलितचेत्तं जीवदुःखासहिष्णुं धृतसहजसमाधिं चिन्मयं कोमलाङ्गं विमलपरमहंसं रामकृष्णं भजामः। विमलपरमहंसं रामकृष्णं भजामः। Let us adore Sri Ramakrishna, the personification of purity, who is the Supreme God Himself born on this earth, always blissful, spotless, full of compassion, full of grace, the master of the whole universe, who resides in everyone's heart. He shines in everyone's heart. Those who keep their heart pure can have the vision of that Supreme Paramatman in the form of Sri Ramakrishna. He could not bear to see the miseries of the beings, human beings on this earth. He came to bestow love. He came to bestow devotion. He came to bestow knowledge. He is ready to give all the spiritual wealth. He wanted to make the whole humanity free from the clutches of bondage. He invites them all openly to come to Him, forgetting all their differences. Whatever religions they might practice doesn't matter. What matters is how far your heart is pure. That's all. It doesn't matter which religion you belong to. Unless you develop purity of heart, you will never have vision of any God. Let us adore Sri Ramakrishna. We are really blessed and fortunate to come in contact with his message of Vedanta, which is really a remarkable message which gives real peace and soothing effect to our lives. Sri Ramakrishna came to show how very important every moment of our life, every moment. Let us be extremely careful about what we do. Let us be extremely careful about what we think. Let us be extremely careful about what we do. We can't be careless, because the more we are careless, the more we are in great danger. Great danger. Nobody can save a careless person. Nobody. So, it is very important to give first priority to our ways of life. No more giving reasons and covering up all our weaknesses. It will never help. Never help. If you want to develop, you have to be very careful. So today's topic I am going to speak. A careless act. Its deadly consequences. How true it is. It is true not only in the secular life, it is also true in the spiritual life. One has to be very careful in whatever life he leads upon. But here we are primarily concerned about our spiritual life. Why we are not inclined to spiritual life? Because we have become careless to the extent that we have lost the importance and significance of spiritual life. It almost appears impossible. We have reached that state because of our own series of careless acts. We are really in great danger. One small instance I would give you. There are so many instances. If you try to recollect your own life, each one of you can find out how many ways you are careless, as a result of which how much you are suffering. Once, 2-3 people came to talk to me when I was in India, in Bangalore. I was sitting in the office. It was about 1 o'clock when all the gates would be closed. It is closing hour. But still, these people came rushing to meet the Swami. Well, I inquired, and what was the matter? When I heard the story, I felt very sad. The story was this. They had one brother. In his boyhood days, along with some other boy friends, they were in a playful mood, and naturally they are very careless about what they do about. Here also we see how the boys in a careless way shoot the innocent people, and every day you see the newspaper, this man is dying, that man is dying because of the careless acts of the youngsters, thoughtless. Nobody to tell them, nobody to train them. That is the terrible situation we are facing all over the world. Parents have become helpless. Society has become helpless. Government has become helpless. Then everybody has to suffer. Anyway, these boys they were playing on, and just they happened to come across some electrical wire which was running there, live wire. They talked in a jocular way. Well, can anybody amongst us touch this wire for a quarter second? It's enough. Just touch it, that's all. Touch it and remove the hand immediately. They bet some paltry amount, some $5 or whatever it is. And this one particular guy, oh, that's nothing, I can do it. Quarter second is nothing. So immediately he put his hand on the electrical live wire. It was high voltage wire, not an ordinary thing. His hand immediately got stuck up there. He could not take out. It was terrible. Then, because he held it in, he touched with 2 hands. Both the hands got deeply hurt. Then he was taken to the hospital. The doctors found out it is a hopeless case. Both the arms must be amputated. Both the arms. Just a meaningless, careless act. Maybe biasness. But biasness will not come to the rescue at the time of crisis. Whether you're a boy or an adult, a bad is bad. That's all. One has to reap whatever he has done, misdeed. whatever it is. Now both the hands are gone. That was when he was quite young boy of 8 or 9 years old. Now he has grown up. He has become a youth. Now he wants to enjoy the world. He wants to marry and settle down. But who will come to marry him? A person having no hands. Both the hands are not there. So these people are coming and asking me, "Sir, will you please find out a bride? Let him be any poor girl, doesn't matter. We are ready to take care of her whole life. Just let her be with this boy." He wanted to have a company. They are asking that way. See, what a terrible thing it is. There is a famous statement in Srimad Ramayana. Yada charati kalyani shubham va yadi va shubham tadeva labhate bhadre karta karmaja matmanaha. Very famous statement uttered by the great King Dasharatha, the father of Sri Ramachandra, at his deathbed. When he was about to pass away his body, he just uttered this. The meaning of this verse is very significant. It means whether one does good or evil, one reaps the fruit thereof. Dasharatha, probably you may know the story, he was terribly grieving because of the separation from his dearest son Sri Ramachandra. He was to go to forest to keep up the promise Dasharatha gave to one of his queens. Well, that's a big story. I am not going to the story part of it. So he could not bear the separation of his son. He's suffering, he's crying and crying and crying. He's not able to breathe, he's not able to take food, he's not able to do anything. It was terrible anguish. Terrible anguish. All his nerves have become inflated. Whole body was reacting. Just at that moment, he recollected why he was reduced to this worst type of suffering, worst type we should say. Just as that guy was amputated, both the arms were amputated. Here, his own most dearest son, very noble son, was separated, and Dasharatha, the greatest king of the time, who was very magnanimous, who was loved by all the people, who was noted for his virtues, who had the purity to have Sri Ramachandra as his own son, who could do a sacrifice, a havan, by which he could invoke God and he could get the blessings of the Supreme Lord, that he would be born as his own son. Such a meritorious person, having the Supreme Paramatman himself as his son, he is now suffering like anything. Just at that moment he recollected. Suddenly the memory flashed. Up to this time he didn't know. He was just crying and crying. Now just before, a few moments before his passing away, he recollected the incident which was responsible for this type of anguish. He said to his wife Kausalya, the mother of Sri Ramchandra, he narrated this incident. Look, I am not suffering like this for nothing. Once it happened, he said, when he was quite young, he became expert in archery. There's a particular science called Shabdavedi. By hearing the sound, he can shoot an arrow just in the direction of the sound. He could hit the target. So he was expert in that field. So he wanted to test it. He wanted to test how far he would be able to do that. So one day, night, it was completely dark. He went to a forest for hunting, just in search of an animal which could come to drink water. And while drinking water, the animals do make some noise, So then he could hit an arrow that would test his skill. That was his plan. So he went. Just then, there was drizzling. For about half an hour or so, the rain was pouring. Then, anyway, in the midst of that, he walked into the forest. Just while he was on his way, he heard a noise resembling that some animal is drinking water. Gala 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 gala, like that. If you put a pitcher into the water, when it is filled up, or when anybody makes the hands or feet touch the water, suddenly the air bubbles come up, they make little noise. Anyway, he thought some elephant must have come. It was completely dark, he could not see. Some elephant must have come to the riverside, probably it's drinking water, so it's making noise. So why not I try now? So he shot an arrow in that direction. It hit the target, no doubt. He passed in his skill. But what happened? He heard the voice, human voice, crying, "Oh, who is that killed me, an innocent ascetic? Who is that who has committed this greatest blunder? Who will look after my blind parents who are just far away little? I wanted to take water for them. They wanted to drink water. But now who will take the water to them? What has happened?" So that arrow has just pierced into his heart. It has gone into the heart. Dasharatha immediately ran. He was in his youth. He ran and he was shocked, terribly annoyed. What a thing I have done. Then he came to the whole situation. Then the son of the blind parents, Rishi Kumar, he said to Dasharatha, "Look, immediately go to my parents. They are just staying about half a mile from here. Go to them. Tell the truth. If you don't tell the truth, your head will split into 1,000 parts. Tell the truth. Then there is chance you may be saved." Well, what a terrible situation. Immediately he went, and when they saw the sound of the footsteps, the parents became happy because they were all waiting for since long time. Why my child has not come? What has happened? But now they heard the footsteps. They were glad. "Oh, my dear son, please come. We were waiting for you long. Please bring the water. We are very thirsty." But then this Poor Dasharatha had to say, "Oh holy people, please excuse me. I am not your son. Your son is in this position. I shot an arrow not knowing. I did this careless act. But I have brought the water for you." They became very much pained because he was the only son. And when that son is lost, they found there is no meaning in their life. They were also ascetics, both father and mother. They were living an austere life in the forest. Now they felt the whole thing was void. They felt terribly disappointed. And then they said to this Dasharatha, "Look, what a treacherous act you have done. Is this the way of trying your skill, not knowing whether you are doing proper or not? The same situation you will also have. You will also have the same terrible pangs of separation. How we are feeling now for the death of my son, in the same way you will also feel when your son would be separated from you, and you will have to meet with death." Just he said this and lost his life. See, simple careless act, but how it has become fatal. In the same way, how many of us are very careless? We don't want to think of God. We don't want, what is this Vedanta, what is this religion, etc., what is this God, etc. This careless utterance is extremely bad. Extremely bad. If you are remembering God, you are remembering for your own sake, not for the sake of God. God is quite happy in his own abode. He'll be rather happy if he is not bothered about. In fact, if you repeat his name, he has to come to you and attend to whatever you wanted. So, how people behave and how people are suffering. Wealth will not give you happiness or peace. It's only proper understanding, proper way of life, proper attitude. These are very essential in our life. I will give you another example. This is also from Srimad Ramayana. You see, Ravana, one of the greatest asuras of the time, he could even defeat the angels. Even gods means ordinary gods, what I mean to say, not the Paramatman. The superhuman, there are some beings who are more than human beings. Angels, you may call them. Those who get into that body because of their meritorious deeds in this world. So they are given that higher region so that they can enjoy their life in the body of God. So they are all called angels. So they were all terribly afraid to come to Ravana. So what he did, he came in the guise of a holy man, and he came to the cottage when Sri Ramachandra was not there, and Lakshmana, Ramachandra's brother, He was also not there. Only Janaki was there, Sri Ramachandra's consort. So he took that opportunity and simply he abducted that lady. He thought, who is there who is more powerful than myself? Even gods are afraid of me. What is these human beings? What these creatures can do to me? Arrogance. So I can do anything. Whatever I do is correct. That was his attitude. So he was just careless about the consequences, what would happen. Just he simply took her away. Though he had most beautiful wife, and he had many wives, no doubt, there was no need for him to take away this Janaki. But he did it. The result was the whole race had to be wiped out. Wiped out. Because of his one foolish act. Even at the last moment, even just before the commencement of the war, Sri Ramachandra sent word. Ravana's own brother Vibhishan, he advised him, even now you return Janaki to Sri Ramachandra. He will excuse you. You can save all the lives. Otherwise there will be lot of bloodshed. But Ravana, he would never accept that. Let anything happen, I am ready to face the situation. Who are these creatures who can fight with me? So that arrogance, that total indifference completely annihilated him and also the whole race. That is how we see. Again come to another, in Mahabharata we have got a very famous episode. This was very famous epics of India, wherein you have got characters, each one depicting the nature of human being in diverse ways, how each one behave. It is not impossible. All those things could happen even now. It is happening in different way. That's all. It is happening, but in a different way. So in Mahabharata there is an episode of Draupadi. You see, the Pandavas and the Kauravas, the cousins, they were playing dice and the Pandavas were defeated, and he was losing all whatever belongings he had while playing the game, and finally he had to lose his wife also. It's a terrible situation. But then, on his part, Dharmaraja did a mistake of playing dice with people, because there was one character by name Shakuni. He was very cunning. So, he ought not to have played with that cunning person staying there and directing the game. But he was not careful enough. He just began to play. The result is he had to lose everything. He had to undergo a lot of suffering in the forest. And the whole story continues. But the point here is, the Draupadi was dragged to the court where all the statesmen, all the different elderly people are sitting there in the assembly. Duryodhana also was sitting there. All the veterans are there. In front of them, Draupadi was dragged down by Duryodhana's own brother, Dushasan. And Dushasan, not only he dragged her, which he ought not to have done. It's a great insult shown to a lady. But much more insult he did was, he began to humiliate her by trying to undress. Then the terrible consequence was the whole Kaurava race had to be wiped out. That's the great Mahabharata war. There is another important episode which I am just trying to tell you. This also occurs in Mahabharata. There were two characters, Drona and Drupada. During their younger days, they were learning under one teacher in a hermitage in a forest. About 5-6 friends were there, and particularly this Drona and Drupada, they became very friendly. And Drupada, before he left the ashram to his place, he just told his friend, "My dear Drona, I am really very grateful for having friendship with you. I am indeed very fond of you. I don't want our friendship to end here just because I have left and you are also going in your own way. But the friendship should continue. You must know, I am the heir to the throne of the Panchalas. There is a particular kingdom. He was a prince. So he was telling Drona, in course of time he would become the king of the place. And he would take him and he would share his kingdom with him. And they could be friends forever throughout their life." Like that he talked. Of course he talked. He wanted to be like that. And then he left to his place. Some years passed. But Drona, he comes from a very poor Brahmin family. They became very poor. Drona, he approached another great sage. You might have heard his name, Parshuram. And he learned from him the archery. He became master of archery. Well, then he came back to his home, but they are very poor, extremely poor. Poor to such an extent, they don't have even milk. Once, their his son was Ashwathama, his name. The boy was playing with the friends. They talked about milk, etc. And the boy became very curious. He has not seen milk at all. So he went to mother and asked, "Mother, my friends were talking about milk. Will you please give me milk? I would like to have." Mother became very sad. The child is asking, she has no milk. And this was heard by Drona. He became very sorrowful. But then he told his wife, "Well, there is no use living the life like this. We must find out some ways and means of getting some livelihood." Now I remember, during my boyhood days, I had one friend by name Drupad. He is now the king of the Panchala. Let us go there. He has already offered me that we would be friends forever. Why not you come? I can even share my kingdom with you, etc., etc. He has talked so nicely. And we were very close friends. Throughout our education career, we were good friends. So I think he will take care of us. There will be no problem. And I can be very much useful to him because I know the archery, etc. Anyway, like that planning, they went to that place. And Drona entered the court, and the Drupada is sitting on the throne. But by the time so many years have passed, he has become very arrogant because of the power. He didn't even show the courtesy of receiving the person who is coming to the court. He became indifferent, careless. Careless. Note this always. I'm pinpointing it. Each one of you should pinpoint in what ways, how many ways you have done careless things in your life, for which in one way or other you are all suffering. If you know and analyze it, then it gives a kind of consolation. That is remarkable. Consolation is very important to sustain the life. So, Drona began to introduce himself. Oh Drupad, I think you remember me. You were great friends in the hermitage. You were learning. I was also learning. We were together for many years. I don't think you have forgotten me. I think you have talked me this way. And he began to repeat what Drupad had assured him before his leaving the hermitage. But he became so indifferent. And he began to talk in a different strain. Well, you see, you are talking about friendship. Friendship is possible between equals and only between equals. That means only two poor people can become friends and only two rich people can become friends. It is stable and it is understandable. But the unusual friendship you are talking about is only a dream. It can never be reality. I am the king, you are a poor Brahmin. How can you claim friendship with me? What I might have told, I don't know, during my younger days. Now you are trying to scratch that and want to find a place here. Get away from here. Don't bother me like this. Get away. Even he could have asked him to go in a polite way. But arrogance makes one careless. And careless leads one to fatal consequences. Drona became terribly annoyed. He immediately left the place without talking any further. This person, I am teaching him a lesson. I will not keep myself peaceful until I take his head. That means he took a vow to kill him. A revengeful attitude developed in him. And he did like that. Anyway, he went to Bhishmacharya and he became the teacher of the Kauravas and Pandavas, and he taught the archery, etc. And then what he, according to his promise, finally, he didn't forget that. All these things he did only to teach Drupada a lesson, a bitter lesson for the careless act which he committed. So the story goes. There's one more story. This is from Srimad Bhagavad. I am talking about. All these things are known to you, but in this particular context I would like to tell how they are important. So every thing that happens has some importance. It has some importance. It has its mark. We should know it. If you know it, you become wiser. Son Abhimanyu. Abhimanyu's son is Parikshit. A very good king, very noble king. Well, but if there is a tiny black spot on a pure white linen, how that tiny black spot becomes very prominent? Because the whole background is super white. So like this Parikshit was so very good in all respects. He had all the qualities of the noble king. But something he did, again I am telling, some careless act he did, for which he had to have a very severe punishment of giving up his own life. To that extent. What happened was, one day he went to a forest on hunting. After wandering here and there for some time, then he found a deer was running in a particular path. Immediately he shot an arrow. It touched the animal, but the animal was not to be seen. Where has it gone? Because it is the deer, it runs very fast. And he began to search for it. Throughout the forest, he began to search. He became terribly exhausted. Finally, he came to the hermitage. There he saw the sage sitting there in meditation. He was observing silence and deeply absorbed in his divine thoughts. And this prince came there and began to ask him, "Well, did you see the deer running through here? Because I shot an arrow, I wanted to see that animal, I want to take that animal." But the sage didn't answer him. He simply kept silent, and moreover, his mind was not in that level. You see, he was in a very high level of consciousness. He didn't want to come down from that high state of ecstasy to this paltry things. Where is that animal gone? Why should he has to answer his question? And what does he know? He is absorbed in his own way. And why this fellow should come and bother him? But he is doing, again, what? I am the king. He thought he can do anything. King means he can do anything. He thought like that. Then he saw here and there, he found a dead serpent lying there, dead one. So he picked it up through his bow and just hanged it on the neck of the sage who was meditating, just to insult him. But the sage did not show any reaction. He was simply in his own mood. He was in his own mood. He was not even aware of what this fellow is doing. He was in high sattvic state. Now then he left, and always thinking about what happened to that animal. I could not get it. Like that. It's a very silly act he has done. Silly, very silly. Throwing the dead snake on the neck of the sage. But what happened afterwards? After some time, the son of the sage, he returned from the woods. He found dead snake on the neck of his father. He became terribly annoyed. What is this? Who is that person who has got that much of arrogance to do like this? Because he was a sage of very austere habits, so he could know probably this might have been done by such and such a fellow. He became terribly angry. He was youth, terribly angry. Who has insulted my father? So he said, from this day till the 7th day, only 7 days he will live. After the 7th day, at the conclusion of the 7th day, he will be bitten by a serpent and he will die. See, the curse was pronounced. But whether the son of the sage could pronounce that curse, that's a different issue. Of course, the father did not like his son to have cursed like that. He admonished him very severely. He told, you have done a greatest mistake in your life. You are ascetic and you have become so angry and you have cursed him. And he told something to his son for his atonement. Anyway, but here what happened? A serpent has to come to kill this, to bite this prince, Parikshit. And the message was reported to him through the messengers of the ashram that he was to be killed after 7 days. At the conclusion of the 7th day, he would be killed. So what was the reaction from the king's side? He realized, well, it's true, I have done carelessly. I have insulted the sage. Well, nobody can escape this. Now death is certain. Because he was noble and he had all good tendencies, he wanted to keep his mind on divine level before his passing away. So he wanted Shuka Maharshi to come to him and recite Srimad Bhagavat. That is how the Bhagavata came to us. The Shuka Muni, he taught the whole Bhagavat to Parikshit Raj. And in the course of time, a great serpent was coming and somebody wanted to prevent it. But then the serpent told that person not to obstruct its way. The words of the ascetic must be fulfilled. I have to bite him. So it happened, actually. But when he was bitten by the serpent, what was his mental condition at the time? His mind was totally absorbed in Lord Krishna. His whole mind was in Krishna. He was not aware. He was not bothered whether he is living in the body or not. He has separated himself from the body consciousness. Well, that is not a thing to be noted here. The point is, a careless act, how it led him to a deadly consequence. That's the thing we have to understand. So in our lives also, how many times we commit such things? How many times? And how many ways we undergo suffering? Yet we do not realize. Yet we do not realize. Sri Ramakrishna would often give the example of the camel biting the thorny bush. It bites. It wants to eat the thorny bush. Blood is oozing out. But again it wants to eat the thorny bush. In the same way, there are people, in spite of continuous suffering, they keep on committing careless acts, keep on doing it. So, you can't be freed from suffering unless you are careful in your life, in your thinking, in your acting, in your willing, in all these aspects. You have to be extremely careful. Then only you can expect to be freed from all kinds of sufferings in the world. So the clinging to the worldly ways of life also is, in a higher sense, a careless act. If we talk about spirituality, immediately they will ask questions. Swamiji, should we not live in the world? Is it possible for everybody to be spiritual? Like that they pose the question. We are not telling you to run away from the world. We are only telling you live in the world, but don't drown yourself in the world. That's what we are telling. Live in the world, but float on the waters of the world. But what you are doing, instead of floating, you are drowning. That's the thing. So how can you float? If you think of the Divine Lord, if you think of God, God is your Savior, God is your friend, He is your father, mother, everything. If there is anybody who can be relied upon, He is none other than God Himself, who is staying in your own heart. That's it. So, let us try to understand these things properly and try to live life in a dignified way. In spite of it, difficulties do come. Nobody is free from the difficulties, but there's a way of tackling them. Well, may Sri Ramakrishna help you in every way so that you may all remember His name and make your life safe in every respect. Thank you all. The benediction. May our learned mothers inspire us with their righteous deeds. May the learned people of noble thoughts guide us. May the omnipresent Om bring us peace and healthy life. May this air be peaceful. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto all. Now this English translation is done from the Sanskrit verse which I am reciting now. This is from Rig Veda. Shanno aditir bhavatu vrate bhishanno bhavantu marutas svarkaha Shanno vishnusamu pushano astu shanno bhavitram Shamvastu vayuhu Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.